When a physical education teacher notices a 9-year-old girl who refuses to change into her gym clothes, insisting on participating in her regular school outfit despite multiple detentions, something about her fearful reactions begins to deeply concern her. What began as a frustrating disciplinary issue would soon uncover a heartbreaking situation that had been hidden beneath layers of clothing and silence for months. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe that sometimes the most important interventions happen when caring professionals look beyond behavior to its cause, hit that like button and subscribe for more. She couldn't have known that her persistence would reveal a truth that would change multiple lives forever, until the moment she glimpsed what lay beneath the little girl's clothing and immediately reached for the phone. Madison Taylor had been teaching physical education at Riverside Elementary for just over 6 years. At 32, her energetic approach and genuine connection with children had made her a favorite among the students in the diverse suburban school. With her athletic build, blonde hair typically secured in a practical ponytail, an encouraging smile that appeared easily and often, Coach Taylor, as she was known to the nearly 400 students under her care, had created a PE program where even the most reluctant participants eventually found activities they could enjoy. Beyond simply teaching physical skills, Madison prided herself on fostering an inclusive environment where children developed confidence along with coordination. Her spacious gymnasium was a well-maintained facility featuring colorful equipment carefully selected to accommodate various ability levels. The walls displayed motivational posters alongside student-created artwork celebrating movement and teamwork. A special corner housed adaptive equipment for students with physical limitations, reflecting Madison's commitment to ensuring all children could participate meaningfully. Unlike the competitive, sometimes intimidating atmosphere that characterized many school gymnasiums, Madison had deliberately created a space where effort and improvement were celebrated above natural athletic ability. Madison lived in a small but comfortable apartment about 15 minutes from the school with her rescue dog, Ace, an energetic border collie mix who occasionally visited the school for special events. She had moved to Riverside after completing her master's degree in physical education with a specialization in elementary-level adaptive PE, drawn by the school's reputation for progressive, child-centered educational approaches. Though not originally from the area, she had quickly become an active community member, coaching youth soccer on weekends and organizing neighborhood fitness events during summer breaks. Principal Elaine Watkins valued Madison's contributions beyond basic physical education. "You've created a program that reaches every child, not just the naturally athletic ones," she had noted during Madison's most recent evaluation. "The way you adapt activities and find each student's strengths has transformed how many of our struggling students view themselves and their abilities." Madison had accepted the compliment graciously, though privately she considered this inclusive approach fundamental to effective physical education rather than a special achievement. Third-grade teacher Sophia Green had become one of Madison's closest colleagues at Riverside. They frequently collaborated on integrated learning activities that combined physical movement with academic content, recognizing that many students learned better when movement was incorporated into lessons. Their professional partnership had evolved into a friendship built on shared educational philosophies and complementary teaching strengths. There had been discussions at recent staff meetings about the increasing complexity of student needs within the district. Budget constraints had stretched support services thin, with the school counselor dividing time between 3 different elementary schools and the district social worker carrying an overwhelming caseload. These limitations sometimes forced classroom teachers and specialists like Madison to take on greater responsibility for identifying and supporting students with challenges beyond academics. One Wednesday afternoon in late September, Madison had encountered an unfamiliar woman speaking with Principal Watkins near the front office. The woman, who she later learned was Carmen Rodriguez, the newly appointed county child welfare liaison, had greeted her with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about how physical education settings might reveal concerns not evident in regular classrooms. There was something refreshingly practical in her approach that resonated with Madison's own observations about children's physical behaviors, often communicating what they couldn't express verbally. "We're trying to help schools recognize that physical and behavioral changes can be early indicators of problems at home," Rodriguez had explained. "PE teachers often notice things classroom teachers miss, because movement sometimes reveals what stillness conceals. This perspective aligned perfectly with observations Madison had made throughout her career, and she'd left the brief conversation feeling a renewed sense of responsibility in her unique position to notice physical signs of potential concerns. Early autumn had brought pleasant temperatures to the small town of Riverside, with the elementary school's expansive playgrounds and sports fields offering ideal conditions for outdoor activities. The school, a well-maintained building constructed in the early 2000s, served approximately 400 students from varied socio-economic backgrounds. Inside, classrooms and hallways displayed the creative energy typical of elementary education, colorful artwork, student projects, and educational displays creating a vibrant learning environment. It was during this season of settling into school routines that Madison first became concerned about Olivia Bennett, a quiet 9-year-old in Mrs. Green's third-grade class. The girl was small for her age with delicate features, wide brown eyes that seemed perpetually watchful, and long dark hair that she often used to shield her face when addressed directly. Her academic performance was solid but unexceptional, and her file noted no significant concerns beyond shyness and difficulty with peer relationships. She lived with her mother and stepfather, with weekend visitation with her biological father noted in her contact information. But nothing could prepare Madison for the mystery that would unfold around Olivia's refusal to change for gym class. The first time Madison really took notice was during the third week of school. While other students changed into the simple PE uniform, t-shirts and athletic shorts or sweatpants depending on the weather, Olivia arrived still wearing her regular school clothes. Jeans and a long-sleeved shirt that significantly limited her movement during activities. When Madison reminded her about the required change of clothes, Olivia quietly stated that she had forgotten her gym clothes that day. "That's okay for today," Madison had told her. "Just remember to bring them next time. It's important to have proper clothes for physical activity." Olivia had nodded without making eye contact, participating minimally in that day's activities, her movements constrained by her inappropriate attire. Madison had made a mental note but hadn't been particularly concerned. Elementary students often forgot gym clothes, especially early in the school year before routines were established. However, the pattern continued. The following week, Olivia again arrived without changing, offering the same quiet excuse about forgetting her clothes. The third week, Madison sent a gentle reminder note home to parents about PE requirements. When Olivia appeared in regular clothes for the fourth consecutive class, Madison decided a more direct approach was needed. "Olivia," she said privately as other students began their warm-up activities, "I've noticed you haven't been changing for PE. Is there a problem with having gym clothes? If your family needs assistance with that, we have resources that can help." The girl's response was barely audible. "I have gym clothes. I just don't want to change. It's a school requirement," Madison explained kindly but firmly. "Proper clothes allow you to move safely and participate fully. Is there a specific reason you don't want to change?" Olivia's eyes remained fixed on the floor. "I just don't like changing with other people." This response wasn't entirely uncommon. Some children began developing body consciousness around third grade, and modesty concerns were something Madison had addressed before. "Would it help if you could use the bathroom stall to change instead of the open locker room?" she offered. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia nodded slightly. Madison considered this a reasonable accommodation and a potential solution to what seemed like typical developmental modesty. "Great! For today, you'll need to participate in your school clothes, but next time you can bring your gym clothes and change privately in the bathroom. Does that work for you?" Another small nod, and Madison had considered the matter resolved. However, the following week brought no change in the situation. Despite the accommodation and another note home, Olivia continued arriving in her regular clothes, now claiming she forgot the arrangement to change in the bathroom. After the sixth consecutive week, Madison implemented standard disciplinary procedures, a detention requiring Olivia to write a reflection about responsibility and meeting class requirements. What struck Madison as unusual was Olivia's response to the consequence. Rather than being upset or argumentative as most children would be, she accepted the detention with a quiet resignation that seemed out of character for a 9-year-old. Even more concerning, the the detention had no effect on the behavior. The pattern continued, with Olivia accepting increasingly serious consequences rather than complying with the simple requirement to change clothes. After consulting with Sophia Green about the situation, Madison learned additional concerning details about Olivia's behavior in the regular classroom. "She's become increasingly withdrawn since last spring," Sophia explained. "Her mother remarried about 18 months ago, and there was an adjustment period that seemed normal at first. But lately, I've noticed some red flags. She flinches at loud noises, seems exhausted most mornings, and has stopped bringing friends home after school." "Has she mentioned anything about her home life?" Madison asked. "Not directly," Sophia replied. "When I asked about her stepfather during a writing assignment about family, she just wrote that he has strict rules and left it at that. Her mother canceled our last 2 conference appointments, which isn't like her. She was very involved last year before the marriage." This additional context elevated Madison's concern from simple rule enforcement to potential welfare issues. In her experience, significant behavioral changes combined with physical avoidance patterns sometimes indicated problems beyond the school environment. The refusal to change clothes, specifically the extreme resistance to revealing more of her body, raised particular concerns about possible physical abuse or inappropriate contact. "I think this needs closer attention," Madison decided. "I'm going to try one more approach before involving administration more formally." The following week, Madison prepared carefully for Olivia's PE class. Rather than addressing the changing issue in front of others, she arranged for her teaching assistant to begin the class activities while she spoke with Olivia privately in her small office adjacent to the gymnasium. "Olivia," she began gently once they were seated, "I'm concerned about you. You're accepting punishments rather than changing for gym, which tells me this isn't about forgetting or simple preference. Is something happening that makes you afraid to change clothes?" The girl's reaction was telling. Her body tensed visibly. Her eyes darted toward the door as if calculating escape, and her breathing quickened noticeably. "No," she whispered, the single word carrying no conviction. Madison chose her next words carefully, balancing directness with sensitivity. "Sometimes people hurt children and tell them to keep it a secret. If someone is hurting you or touching you in ways that make you uncomfortable, that's not your fault, and you won't be in trouble for telling a trusted adult." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but she shook her head vehemently. "Nobody's touching me bad. It's not that." The specific denial of inappropriate touching while still maintaining emotional distress suggested there might be another form of abuse occurring. Madison shifted her approach slightly. "Are you afraid to show parts of your body? Maybe because of marks or injuries?" The child's sharp intake of breath and sudden stillness confirmed Madison's growing suspicion. After a long moment of silence, Olivia spoke so quietly Madison had to lean forward to hear. "If I show you, you can't tell. He'll know I told, and it will get worse." These words, the classic language of an abused child who had been threatened into silence, sent a chill through Madison despite her years of professional training on mandatory reporting. "Olivia, if someone is hurting you, my job is to help make sure you're safe. I can't keep that kind of secret because it's my responsibility to protect you. But I can promise that if you show me, we'll make sure you're protected from anyone who might hurt you." Tears now streaming down her face, Olivia seemed to wrestle with an impossible decision: continue hiding and suffering alone, or trust an adult despite threats about the consequences of disclosure. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably less than a minute, she slowly turned in her chair, lifting the back of her shirt just enough to reveal her lower back. What Madison saw caused her to inhale sharply, years of professional composure tested by the sight of multiple welts and bruises in various stages of healing. The marks showed clear patterns of deliberate injury, some appearing to be from a belt or similar strap, others showing the distinctive outline of a hand. Most disturbing were several circular burns that could only have been made by cigarettes deliberately pressed into the child's skin. Maintaining her outward calm for Olivia's sake required tremendous effort. "Thank you for being brave enough to show me," Madison said, her voice steady despite her internal distress. "These marks look painful, and no one has the right to hurt you like this. Can you tell me who did this to you?" "My stepdad," Olivia whispered, quickly pulling her shirt back down. He says I need discipline because I'm bad. Mom works evenings now, and he says what happens when she's gone is between us. The revelation, confirming Madison's worst fears while adding the complication of potential maternal absence during the abuse, created an immediate need for protective intervention. As a mandated reporter, Madison was legally and ethically obligated to report suspected abuse, particularly when faced with clear physical evidence and a direct disclosure. Olivia, what you've shown me is very serious, she explained gently. I need to make a call right now to people whose job it is to keep children safe. Would you like to stay here with me while I do that? Or would you prefer to wait with Mrs. Murphy at the front desk? She has a therapy dog today who loves gentle petting. Recognizing the child might need emotional space during the initial reporting process, Madison had thoughtfully provided an option that offered both supervision and comfort. Olivia chose the therapy dog, and after walking her to the front office and ensuring Mrs. Murphy understood the situation required special sensitivity, without discussing details in front of Olivia, Madison returned to her office and made the call that would change multiple lives. The county's Child Protective Services hotline responded with appropriate urgency to Madison's detailed report, particularly given the physical evidence she described and Olivia's direct disclosure. Within an hour, a CPS investigator arrived at the school, accompanied by a police officer specializing in child welfare cases. Principal Watkins joined Madison in her office as they briefed the authorities on the situation before bringing Olivia in for a gentle, trauma-informed interview. The investigator, a woman named Denise Washington with extensive experience in child abuse cases, spoke with Olivia with remarkable skill, balancing the need for critical information with sensitivity to the child's emotional state. With Madison present as a trusted adult, Olivia revealed a pattern of escalating physical abuse that had begun shortly after her mother's evening shift work started 3 months earlier. The stepfather's discipline had progressed from excessive timeouts and verbal berating to physical punishment that had recently included cigarette burns when he'd been drinking. Most heartbreakingly, Olivia revealed that she had tried to tell her mother once, only to have the stepfather convince her that Olivia was exaggerating normal discipline to cause problems in their marriage. The mother, exhausted from working double shifts and emotionally dependent on her new husband, had chosen to believe him rather than investigate further, telling Olivia to stop making up stories for attention. This additional information created a more complex picture for intervention. A child being actively abused by a step-parent, with a mother who was potentially neglectful through her failure to protect but who might herself be experiencing manipulation or emotional abuse from the same perpetrator. We need to document these injuries properly, Denise explained to Olivia with gentle clarity. That means taking some pictures at the Children's Advocacy Center where we have special cameras and private rooms. Would that be okay with you? After receiving Olivia's nervous consent, arrangements were made for her to be transported to the Advocacy Center with Madison accompanying her as a supportive presence. The school would contact the mother at work, informing her that she needed to meet them at the center regarding an urgent matter concerning Olivia, without providing details that might enable her to alert the stepfather. The next several hours unfolded with the careful coordination typical of well-handled child welfare interventions. At the Advocacy Center, trained medical professionals documented Olivia's injuries comprehensively, confirming Madison's initial assessment of multiple intentional injuries in various stages of healing. A forensic interview conducted by a specialist yielded additional details about the timing and nature of the abuse, creating a clear record for both protective and potential criminal proceedings. When Olivia's mother arrived, her initial defensive anger quickly transformed to shocked horror upon being shown the photographic evidence of her daughter's injuries. Her collapse into tears seemed to confirm the investigator's theory that she had been unaware of the severity of her husband's discipline, having either not seen Olivia undressed recently or having chosen not to look too closely due to her own complicated relationship with her husband. I knew he was strict, she sobbed to the social worker, but he convinced me it was just timeouts and occasional spanking. I've been working so much, taking extra shifts to pay off his gambling debts. I haven't even been home to put her to bed most nights. The revelation of financial exploitation added another layer to the family dysfunction, suggesting the mother might herself be a victim of control and manipulation. The immediate safety plan developed by CPS required the stepfather to leave the home pending investigation, with a protective order preventing contact with Olivia. If the mother proved unable or unwilling to enforce this separation, alternative placement for Olivia would become necessary. Given the documented injuries and Olivia's disclosure, police moved to arrest the stepfather that same day on charges of child abuse and assault. For Madison, the aftermath of her discovery brought a mixture of professional validation and emotional exhaustion. She had noticed what others had missed, persisted when initial approaches failed, and created enough safety for a frightened child to reveal the truth. Yet the reality of what Olivia had endured, suffering in silence while adults failed to protect her, weighed heavily on her heart. "You did everything right," Sophia assured her when they spoke after school that day. "You noticed a pattern, you investigated sensitively, and you acted immediately when you confirmed abuse. Many teachers might have just kept giving detentions for the uniform violation without looking deeper." The following weeks brought significant developments in Olivia's case. The stepfather, faced with overwhelming physical evidence and Olivia's testimony, accepted a plea agreement that included incarceration and mandatory treatment. The mother, initially placed on a safety plan with strict supervision, engaged actively with services, including counseling to address her role in the situation and employment assistance to find work with regular daytime hours that would allow her to be present for Olivia. Most significantly for Olivia's recovery, the investigation uncovered that her biological father had been seeking increased custody for months, concerned about changes in his daughter's behavior during weekend visits. His previous attempts had been thwarted by the stepfather's manipulation of the mother and legal system, but with CPS involvement, his concerns were finally validated. A temporary custody arrangement was established, allowing Olivia to live primarily with her father while maintaining supervised contact with her mother, who was genuinely remorseful and committed to rebuilding trust with her daughter. The ripple effects of Madison's intervention extended beyond Olivia's individual situation. Principal Watkins, deeply affected by how close the school had come to missing the signs of serious abuse, implemented enhanced training for all staff on recognizing potential indicators of maltreatment. The PE changing policy was revised to include more privacy options for all students, recognizing that body consciousness and modesty needs varied widely among elementary-age children. Most significantly, Carmen Rodriguez from County Child Welfare used Olivia's case to develop a specialized training program specifically for physical education teachers, coaches, and school nurses, professionals uniquely positioned to observe children's bodies for signs of abuse that might remain hidden in regular classroom settings. Madison was invited to help develop this training, sharing her experience while protecting Olivia's privacy. 3 months after the intervention, Madison received permission to visit Olivia at her father's home, where the physical and emotional transformation in the child was remarkable. The formerly withdrawn, fearful girl greeted her with a genuine smile, proudly showing Madison her room and introducing her to a puppy her father had adopted to provide emotional support during her recovery. "I'm going to a new school now," Olivia explained as they sat in the cozy living room. "It's closer to Dad's house. But I wanted to thank you for listening when I finally showed you my back. You were very brave that day," Madison told her sincerely. "It takes a lot of courage to ask for help when someone has threatened you not to tell. My counselor says I didn't do anything wrong," Olivia said, her voice stronger than Madison had ever heard it at school. "She says what he did was the wrong thing, not anything I did." This statement, reflecting the beginning of healing from the distorted perspectives abusers typically impose on their victims, moved Madison deeply. It represented the first steps in Olivia's journey toward understanding she had never deserved the treatment she received, regardless of what her stepfather had claimed about discipline and being bad. During their visit, Olivia's father expressed his profound gratitude. "I knew something was wrong," he explained while Olivia played with the puppy in the yard. She stopped talking about her home life, began having nightmares during visits, but whenever I asked questions, she shut down completely. When I raised concerns with her mother, I was accused of trying to cause problems in their marriage. His voice broke slightly. "To think what might have happened if you hadn't noticed and acted. I'm just grateful she felt safe enough to finally show me," Madison replied. Many children never reach that point of trust with an adult. By spring, approximately 6 months after Madison had made the call to CPS, Olivia's case had progressed through both family and criminal courts. The stepfather was serving his sentence, with court-ordered treatment addressing both his violence and substance abuse issues. The mother, who had completed parenting classes and individual therapy, had established a more appropriate co-parenting relationship with Olivia's father, with gradually increasing unsupervised visitation as she demonstrated her commitment to putting her daughter's needs first. Most importantly, Olivia herself was thriving in her new environment. Reports from her new school indicated she was academically successful, socially engaged, and particularly meaningful to Madison, enthusiastically participating in physical education in appropriate gym clothes without fear or shame. The physical wounds had healed completely, though faint scars remained from the deeper burns. The psychological healing would be a longer journey, but with consistent therapy and stable, supportive care from both parents, Olivia was making remarkable progress. During a professional development conference where Madison presented a session on recognizing signs of abuse in physical education settings, she received an unexpected gift, a handmade card delivered by Carmen Rodriguez. Inside was a drawing of a little girl in gym clothes standing tall and smiling, with a message in careful childish handwriting. "Thank you for seeing what was wrong and making it right. I'm not afraid anymore." The simple yet profound message, delivered with full permission from Olivia's father but maintaining appropriate boundaries, reminded Madison why seemingly small actions like noticing a child's reluctance to change clothes could have life-altering implications. The following September, as Madison welcomed new students to her gymnasium, she carried with her both deeper awareness of the signs of potential abuse and renewed commitment to looking beyond behavioral issues to their possible causes. When a new student appeared reluctant to participate in certain activities, Madison noticed immediately, not with alarm or assumption, but with the appropriate attentiveness that might reveal whether this was simply preference or something requiring further exploration. Recovery hadn't been instant for Olivia or her family. The physical wounds had healed relatively quickly, but the psychological impacts, the trust issues, hypervigilance, and fear required ongoing professional support and patience. The systems, too, had changed: new training, better awareness, improved coordination between schools and protective services. Small but significant steps toward ensuring that other children would not have to suffer in silence while adults focused on rule compliance rather than underlying causes. The story that had begun with a PE teacher's concern about a dress code violation had transformed into something unexpected, not just an intervention that saved one child from ongoing abuse, but a catalyst for community-wide changes that would protect many others. As Madison organized equipment for her first classes of the new year, she kept Olivia's card pinned to her office bulletin board as a reminder of why looking beyond behavior to its causes was perhaps the most important skill any educator could develop. Not an ending, but a new beginning for Olivia, for her healing family, and for a school system more attuned to the silent signals that children sometimes use when words are too frightening or forbidden. A reminder that healing is possible when caring adults pay attention to the small details that speak volumes, and when systems respond not just with punishment but with protection for our most vulnerable children. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more. When a seasoned bus driver notices a little girl refusing to board his bus for the third day in a row, standing frozen at her stop with fear in her eyes, he knows something isn't right. The bruises peeking from beneath her sleeve and her trembling hands tell a story no child should ever have to write. What he discovers after following her home will shake a community to its core and remind us all why we must never look away. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe one person's attention can save a life, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. What began as concern soon turned into alarm when the driver spotted bruises partially hidden beneath the girl's sleeve, until he found the first crumpled note that changed everything. Ray Morrison had been driving the same school bus route for 15 years. He knew every pothole, every turn, and every child who climbed those steps each morning. The quiet satisfaction of safely transporting children had become the anchor of his days, especially since his own daughter had grown up and moved across the country. His empty house echoed with memories, but his bus filled the void with purpose. But nothing could prepare him for what awaited on that crisp autumn morning. The morning air carried a biting chill as Ray completed his pre-drive inspection. 15 years on the job had taught him the importance of routine. He checked each tire, inspected the brake lines, and tested every signal light with methodical precision. His weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, his mind elsewhere. It had been a quiet week, almost too quiet. "Hey, Ray, cold enough for ya?" Doris, the dispatch supervisor, called from the office doorway, clutching her ever-present coffee mug. Ray offered a half-smile. "Getting there. Won't be long before we're scraping windows again." Small talk was easy with Doris. They'd worked together for over a decade, their friendship built on brief morning exchanges and occasional shared lunches. "Well, stay warm out there. Kids seem extra sluggish when the temperature drops," she said before retreating back inside. Ray climbed aboard his empty bus, settling into the worn driver's seat that had molded to his frame over the years. The familiar smell of diesel fuel, artificial pine air freshener, and the lingering scent of children's snacks greeted him. He adjusted his mirrors and pulled out of the lot, beginning his route exactly on schedule. He'd been driving for the district long enough to watch some of his first kindergartners graduate high school. Parents waved from driveways, and he nodded in return, a reliable fixture in the community. The job wasn't glamorous, but Ray took pride in it. 32 children depended on him every day, 33 if you counted Sophia Chun, who had started riding his bus just 3 weeks ago after moving to the district. Unlike the other children who bounded onto his bus with boundless energy or sleepy reluctance, Sophia had caught Ray's attention from her first day. She was small for a third grader, with watchful eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings. She never spoke unless spoken to, always clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield. As Ray approached Maple Street, he spotted the first cluster of waiting children stomping their feet against the cold. They boarded with the usual cacophony of greetings and complaints about the weather. 3 stops later, he pulled up to the corner of Elm and 4th, where Sophia typically waited. She stood alone at the stop, her small frame nearly swallowed by an oversized jacket. But something was different today. When the doors swung open, she didn't move. Ray waited, but Sophia remained frozen, staring at the bus entrance with wide eyes. After a moment's hesitation, she took a step backward. "Morning, Sophia," Ray called gently. "Ready for school?" The girl shook her head almost imperceptibly, her gaze dropping to the sidewalk. "You feeling okay?" Ray asked, concern creeping into his voice. Before Sophia could respond, a man Ray hadn't seen before appeared beside her, his hand firmly gripping her shoulder. He was tall and well-dressed, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "She's fine," the man said smoothly. "Just a little stomach ache. I'll drive her to school once she feels better." Ray noticed how Sophia seemed to shrink beneath the man's grip, but he had no reason to question a parent. "Hope you feel better soon," he said to Sophia before closing the doors and pulling away. As Ray checked his rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of the man leading Sophia back toward a house. Something in the girl's reluctant posture nagged at him, but he had a schedule to keep and other children waiting. The incident might have faded from Ray's mind if not for what happened the next day. Again, Sophia stood at the bus stop, and again she refused to board. This time, she was alone, but as Ray opened his mouth to question her, a car horn blared from down the street. The same man from yesterday waved from a black sedan. "I've got her today," he called, and Sophia turned away from the bus, shoulders hunched. By the third day, Ray's concern had crystallized into something more urgent. Once more, Sophia waited at the stop, her face noticeably paler than before. When the doors opened, Ray saw her hands trembling. "Sophia," he said softly, "would you like to get on the bus today?" The girl lifted her eyes, and Ray felt his chest tighten. There was fear there, raw and unmistakable. She took a small step forward, then froze as a car door slammed somewhere behind her. Without a word, she turned and fled down the sidewalk, disappearing around a corner. Ray's instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. He called dispatch. "Doris, I've got a situation here. The Chen girl won't board again, and something's not right. I'm going to be a few minutes late to the next stop." "Ray, you know the policy about keeping schedule." "I know, but I need 5 minutes. Something's not adding up." With a sigh that crackled through the radio, Doris relented. 5 minutes, Morrison. Not a second more. Ray secured the bus and stepped onto the sidewalk, following the path Sophia had taken. He moved quickly, rounding the corner in time to see her small figure hurrying down a residential street. His conscience warred with procedure. Bus drivers didn't leave their routes. They didn't follow children. But Ray couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia needed help. He maintained a respectful distance, not wanting to frighten her further. When she turned onto a narrow walkway leading to a modest 2-story house, Ray paused across the street. The property appeared well-kept but strangely sterile, with no toys or evidence of a child visible in the yard. As Sophia reached the front door, it swung open. The man from previous days stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from annoyance to forced pleasantness when he spotted Ray across the street. He ushered Sophia inside with a firm hand on her back, offering Ray a wave that seemed more warning than greeting before closing the door. Ray stood frozen, uncertain what to do. He had no proof that anything was amiss, just a growing unease and the memory of Sophia's frightened eyes. His radio crackled with Doris's voice demanding an update. With a heavy heart, he returned to his bus and resumed his route. Throughout the day, Ray couldn't focus. Sophia's face haunted him, along with questions he couldn't answer. Who was the man? Ray had met Mrs. Chen briefly during the first week of school, a harried-looking single mother who had thanked him profusely for being patient with Sophia as they settled into a new community. The man didn't resemble Sophia or her mother. A stepfather, perhaps? A relative? Whoever he was, Sophia clearly feared him. When his shift ended, Ray made a decision that would change everything. Instead of heading home to his empty house, he drove back to Sophia's neighborhood. The rational part of his brain told him this was crossing a line, but the memory of Sophia's fearful eyes silenced his doubts. He'd spent 15 years watching children grow, learning to read their emotions as clearly as road signs. Fear like Sophia's didn't come from nowhere. He parked a block away and walked to a small coffee shop with a view of the street. The afternoon crowd had thinned, allowing him to claim a window seat with an unobstructed view of the Chen house. He ordered a black coffee he didn't really want, the ceramic mug warming his calloused hands as his eyes remained fixed on the modest 2-story across the street. "Refill." The barista's voice startled him after an hour of vigilance. "Thanks," Ray murmured, though his first cup was barely touched. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, didn't want to explain why a 60-year-old bus driver was staring out a window for hours on end. His thoughts drifted to his own daughter, Melissa. She'd call this weekend, as she did every other Sunday. He'd tell her about the weather, about Doris's retirement party coming up, about the minor transmission issue they'd fixed on his bus. He wouldn't mention Sophia or his growing obsession with ensuring her safety. Melissa would worry, might even suggest he was getting too involved. Maybe she'd be right. The sky outside darkened as evening approached. Occasional lights flickered on in the Chun house, shadows moving behind curtains. Ray checked his watch. 2 hours had passed, and he was beginning to feel like a fool. What exactly did he expect to discover from a coffee shop window? What would he tell the police if he did see something concerning? That he'd been spying on a child's home. Just as he was about to give up, to chalk his concerns up to an old man's overactive imagination, the front door opened. Mrs. Chen emerged, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion as she hurried to her car. Even from this distance, Ray could read the bone-deep weariness in her movements, the way she checked her watch repeatedly as she fumbled with her keys. A single mother working late, rushing to what was probably a second job or night shift. She drove away, leaving Sophia presumably inside with the unknown man. Ray's concern deepened, a cold knot forming in his stomach. The house stood quiet for several minutes before a silhouette appeared at an upstairs window, small, child-sized. For a moment it seemed to be looking directly at him, though Ray knew that was impossible at this distance. Then, abruptly, the silhouette disappeared, as if pulled away from the window. The following morning, Ray arrived at Sophia's stop early, his stomach knotted with anticipation. He'd barely slept, his dreams filled with fragmented images of small figures at windows and shadowy men lurking at bus stops. Dawn had found him already dressed, mechanically performing his pre-trip inspection with half his mind still on Sophia's house. He idled at the curb 10 minutes before scheduled pickup, watching the early morning stillness of the neighborhood through his windshield. Frost clung to the edges of lawns and rooftops, the late autumn chill asserting itself more forcefully each day. Ray adjusted the heater, his weathered hands stiff with cold and age. Movement caught his eye, a small figure hurrying down the sidewalk, breath fogging in the morning air. Sophia was early too, rushing toward the bus with none of her previous hesitation. To his surprise, she was already waiting, her small frame rigid with tension. When she saw him, something unexpected happened. She moved toward the bus with purpose, glancing nervously over her shoulder every few steps, as if expecting pursuit. "Good morning, Sophia," Ray said as she climbed the stairs, noting how she clung to the handrail, her knuckles white with effort. Up close, he could see dark circles beneath her eyes, her hair hastily pulled back, wisps escaping in every direction. "I'm glad you're feeling better." Sophia didn't respond verbally, but as she passed his seat, something fluttered to the floor, a folded piece of paper that landed by Ray's foot. The movement was subtle, so quick he almost missed it, but her sideways glance confirmed his suspicion. This was intentional. He retrieved it as she made her way to an empty seat, unfolding it discreetly while the other children boarded. The paper was torn from a notebook, its edges ragged as if ripped in haste. In wobbly, childish handwriting were 5 words that made his blood run cold. "He's not my daddy. Help!" Ray's heart hammered against his ribs. He carefully refolded the note, feeling the weight of it as he tucked it into his shirt pocket, directly over his thundering heart. His fingers lingered there, as if protecting the fragile plea, the physical evidence of what he'd only suspected until now. He checked his mirror, finding Sophia watching him with desperate hope in her eyes, her small shoulders hunched forward in anticipation. He gave her the smallest of nods, a promise he wasn't entirely sure how to keep. The rest of the children boarded with their usual chaos of backpacks and lunch boxes, complaints about homework and early mornings. Ray greeted each automatically, his mind racing through possible next steps, the gravity of Sophia's note burning in his pocket. He had evidence now, not just suspicion and unease, but an actual plea for help. As he pulled away from the curb, Ray's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. He forced himself to breathe evenly, to focus on the road and the precious cargo of 33 children trusting him for safe passage. But his mind kept circling back to those 5 scrawled words and the courage it must have taken for Sophia to write them. At the next stop, he found himself studying each parent who waved goodbye to their children, each interaction between adult and child. Had he missed other signs over the years? Other children who might have needed help but hadn't found a way to ask? The thought made his throat tighten with something between grief and determination. Throughout the morning route, Ray formulated a plan. He needed more information before going to authorities with nothing but a cryptic note and his suspicions. The note gave weight to his concerns, but he'd need more to ensure immediate action. He'd seen enough news stories about overworked social services to know that vague reports often got deprioritized. When he dropped the children at school, he followed Sophia with his eyes until she disappeared through the front doors, resisting the urge to call her back, to promise her directly that help was coming. Instead, he approached the front office, composing his features into a mask of casual inquiry. "Morning, Vicky," he greeted the school secretary, a longtime acquaintance with steel-gray hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on the end of her nose. They'd exchanged pleasantries nearly every school day for a decade. "Got a question about a new student, Sophia Chen?" Her mother mentioned health concerns when she first started, but I've forgotten the details. "Anything I should be aware of?" Vicky frowned, typing the name into her computer with long, acrylic nails that clacked against the keyboard. Let's see. Sophia Chun, 3rd grade, Mrs. Beckman's class. Transferred in 3 weeks ago. She squinted at the screen. No medical alerts on file. She peered at him over her reading glasses, curiosity evident in her expression. Why do you ask? Ray leaned casually against the counter, keeping his voice low. She's missed the bus a few days, and when she did ride, she seemed under the weather. He replied, careful to keep his tone casual despite the urgency thrumming through him. Also, I've seen her with a man in the mornings sometimes. Tall fellow, dark hair? Must be her father, I guess. He watched Vicky's face carefully, noting the slight narrowing of her eyes as she returned her attention to the computer screen, scrolling through whatever information the school had on file for Sophia. Vicky's frown deepened as she reviewed the screen, the clacking of her nails pausing. According to her enrollment forms, it's just Sophia and her mother. Ms. Chun is listed as a single parent, sole guardian. She adjusted her glasses, scrolling further. No father or male guardian on any of the emergency contact forms. Not even a grandfather or uncle listed as backup. Ray felt a chill slide down his spine, his suspicions crystallizing into certainty. Is that right? Must have been an uncle or family friend, then, he said, working to keep his voice level. Thanks, Vicky. Ray? Vicky called as he turned to leave, lowering her voice. Is everything okay with the Chun girl? You don't usually ask about specific students. Ray paused, weighing how much to share. Just keeping an eye out, he said finally. New kid seems a bit withdrawn. You know how it is. Vicky nodded slowly, something knowing in her eyes. We all have to look out for them, she agreed. Let me know if you notice anything else concerning. He left the office with growing certainty that his concerns were justified. The note in his pocket felt heavier now, validated by the school records. No authorized male figure should be controlling Sophia's movements, keeping her from school, or instilling the kind of fear he'd witnessed. During his midday break, Ray drove to the local police station. The building was squat and utilitarian, its brick facade weathered by decades of New England winters. He'd driven past it countless times but had never had reason to enter. Today, he walked through the glass doors with purpose, the note carefully preserved in his pocket. Officer Dina Rodriguez, who had once been a passenger on his bus route, was working the front desk. She'd grown from a gangly middle schooler with braces into a composed woman in uniform, though he could still see traces of the curious girl who'd peppered him with questions about the bus's mechanical systems. Mr. Morrison? Recognition dawned on her face. It's been years. Call me Ray. Please, he managed a small smile. You've done well for yourself, Dina. What brings you in? She asked, her friendly smile fading as she noted his serious expression. I need some advice, he said quietly, glancing around the busy lobby. It's about one of my students. I think she might be in trouble. Understanding immediately, Officer Rodriguez led him to a private room where Ray laid out everything. Sophia's behavior, the man's presence, the note, and what he'd learned from the school. His words spilled out in a carefully ordered recitation of facts, each observation presented chronologically as she took notes on a small pad. How long have you been driving that route? She asked when he finished. 15 years, Ray replied. Same neighborhoods. Different kids as they grow up and move on. She nodded, making another note. And you've never had concerns like this before? No, the single syllable carried the weight of his certainty. I've seen kids going through hard times, divorce, moves, bullying. You learn to spot the signs. But this feels different. Dangerous. Officer Rodriguez studied him for a moment before setting down her pen. You've done the right thing coming forward, she said. This is enough for us to conduct a welfare check, but we need to proceed carefully. If there's nothing wrong, we don't want to create problems for the family. If there is something wrong, she left the sentence unfinished, the implications hanging in the sterile air between them. What happens now? Ray asked, his hands folded tightly in his lap. I'll speak with my sergeant, and we'll likely send someone to the residence today. In the meantime, stay on your regular schedule. If Sophia rides your bus this afternoon, Act normally, but keep an eye out for any signs of distress. She hesitated before adding, and Ray, be careful. If this man is who we suspect he might be, confrontation could be dangerous. Ray nodded, feeling both relieved to have shared his concerns and anxious about what might follow. Should I tell her mother? She seemed nice enough, just tired. Maybe she doesn't know. Let us handle that part, Officer Rodriguez interrupted gently. If this man isn't supposed to be with the child, we need to understand the full situation first. Sometimes these cases are, she searched for the right words, complicated. The warning was clear enough. Ray had read news stories of custody disputes turned violent, of children caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts. He wouldn't do anything to put Sophia at further risk. As he left the station, the weight on his shoulders had shifted rather than lifted. He'd done what he could for now, but the waiting felt like its own kind of torture. He checked his watch, 2 hours until afternoon pickup. The afternoon crawled by as Ray completed his routes, constantly checking the time. Each stop felt interminable, each red light an eternity. His mind kept returning to Sophia, wondering what might be happening at the police station, at her home. Had they conducted the welfare check yet? What had they found? The questions circled endlessly, with no answers forthcoming. As the clock ticked closer to elementary school dismissal, Ray found himself rehearsing what he would say to Sophia if she boarded his bus. How he could reassure her without making promises he couldn't keep. The responsibility weighed on him more heavily than it had in all his years of driving. When he finally pulled up to the elementary school for dismissal, he scanned the line of departing children anxiously, searching for Sophia's small figure among the brightly colored jackets and backpacks. The teachers supervising dismissal checked their clipboards, directing children to buses and parent pickup with practiced efficiency. Relief flooded him when he spotted Sophia among them, though she moved with the same wary vigilance he'd noticed before. Today, her dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, flyaway strands escaping around her face. She clutched her backpack straps with white-knuckled intensity, her eyes darting constantly as she approached the bus. She boarded silently, sliding into the same seat as the morning. As the bus filled with chattering children, Ray noticed her watching him intently in the mirror. He offered what he hoped was a reassuring smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared secret. She didn't smile back, but some of the tension seemed to ease from her shoulders, her death grip on her backpack relaxing slightly. Everyone buckled? Ray called out his usual reminder, receiving a chorus of affirmations and groans in return. He pulled away from the curb, hyper-aware of Sophia's reflection in his mirror, of the trust she'd placed in him with those 5 desperate words. The route proceeded normally, each stop a familiar rhythm of opening doors, counting exiting children, checking mirrors, closing doors. Ray found comfort in the routine even as anxiety churned beneath his practiced calm. 12 stops down, 3 to go before Sophia's. He steeled himself for what might come next. As he approached the corner of Elm and 4th, Ray spotted the black sedan parked near the corner, the man leaning against it with his arms crossed over his chest, sunglasses obscuring his eyes despite the overcast day. He wore a dark jacket zipped to his throat, his posture radiating impatience. Sophia had seen him too. Her reflection in the mirror showed pure panic, her small body pressing back against the seat as if trying to disappear into the upholstery. Her eyes locked with Ray's in the mirror, silently pleading. When the doors opened for the stop, she remained frozen in her seat while the other children for that stop filed past, chattering and oblivious to her distress. The man straightened, his expression darkening as he stared at the bus, taking a step toward the curb. Ray made a split-second decision, one that ran counter to 15 years of strict adherence to protocol. Forgot something, kids. 1 second, he closed the doors before the last child had fully exited and pulled back into traffic, heart pounding against his ribs. Sorry for the confusion, he called to the bewildered students standing on the sidewalk and those still on the bus. We'll circle back in a minute. In the mirror, he saw the man's face contort with anger, mouth opening in what might have been a shout drowned by the bus's engine. The sedan pulled away from the curb with a squeal of tires, following the bus. Ray radioed dispatch immediately, his voice tight with urgency. "Doris, this is Ray. I need police at Elm and Maple now. The situation with that student, it's escalating. There's a man following my bus." Static crackled before Doris's confused voice responded. "Ray, what are you?" "Please, Doris. Call Officer Rodriguez at the station. She knows the details. Tell her it's happening now." He cut her off, fear sharpening his tone. "And Doris? Tell her he's in a black sedan, license plate starting with NXJ. He hadn't realized he'd memorized even part of the plate until the information spilled from his lips. 15 years of professional observation had left their mark. "Stay calm, Ray," Doris replied, her confusion replaced by professional composure. "I'm calling it in now. Where are you headed?" "Taking Jefferson to Maine, then past the station," Ray said, planning his route to areas with more traffic, more witnesses, more safety. He drove carefully, maintaining normal speed while taking a route that would lead past the police station. The sedan stayed several cars behind, but Ray could see it weaving through traffic to keep the bus in sight. The children, sensing something was wrong, had grown unusually quiet, whispers replacing their typical after-school exuberance. "Mr. Ray." A fourth grader named Marcus stood beside his seat, eyes wide with concern. "Are we in trouble?" "Not at all," Ray assured him, forcing a calmness into his voice he didn't feel. "Just a small change of plans. Everyone stay seated, please." Marcus nodded solemnly and returned to his seat. In the mirror, Ray could see him leaning over to whisper to his seatmate, the ripple of curiosity spreading through the bus. Sophia remained frozen, her gaze fixed on the floor, shoulders hunched forward as if to make herself smaller. As they approached the station, Ray saw 2 police cruisers pull out, lights flashing but sirens silent. Relief washed through him, followed immediately by concern about what would happen next. The sedan abruptly turned down a side street and disappeared from view, the driver evidently spotting the police presence ahead. Officer Rodriguez flagged him down a block from the station. Her cruiser angled across a side street to create a safe stopping zone. Ray pulled the bus over, engaging the parking brake with hands that trembled slightly from adrenaline. "Everyone okay on board?" she asked as she boarded the bus, her uniform and badge immediately commanding the children's attention and respect. Ray nodded, acutely aware of 30 pairs of young eyes watching curiously, questions forming on small lips. He could feel Sophia's gaze boring into him from midway down the aisle, a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Hi, kids," Officer Rodriguez said cheerfully, assuming a tone that wouldn't frighten the children. "Sorry to interrupt your ride home. We just need to borrow your driver for a quick minute. Officer Jenkins is going to come aboard and tell you a funny story while Mr. Morrison and I chat outside. Okay?" A young officer with a friendly face boarded, greeting the children with exaggerated enthusiasm that successfully diverted their attention. Rodriguez led Ray off the bus where her partner waited beside their cruiser, notebook already in hand. "The man following you is gone for now," she informed him in a low voice. "We've got his partial plate and vehicle description. Another unit is canvassing the area." She glanced toward the bus, where Sophia sat watching through the window. "We need to get her somewhere safe until we sort this out. We've contacted her mother at work. She's understandably concerned and is meeting us at the station." "What about Sophia?" Ray asked, unable to mask the worry in his voice. "She's terrified of this man." "That's why I'm here," Rodriguez explained. "I'll ride with you to finish dropping off the other children. Then we'll take Sophia to the station where her mother is waiting. We'll need your statement as well." She squeezed his arm briefly. "You did the right thing, Ray." "Quick thinking." Ray nodded, the adrenaline beginning to ebb, leaving him shaky. "I didn't know what else to do." He was waiting for her, and she was so afraid. "You protected her," Rodriguez said simply. "That's what matters." Ray agreed, and Rodriguez boarded the bus with him. She sat in the front seat, chatting casually with the children to keep them calm while Ray completed the route. Sophia remained in her seat, her wide eyes darting between Ray and the officer, hope and fear warring in her expression. When the last child except Sophia had been dropped off, Ray drove directly to the police station. Ms. Chun was waiting outside, her face etched with worry and confusion. When Sophia saw her mother, she burst into tears and ran into her arms, clinging with a desperation that made Ray's throat tighten with emotion. Inside, while Sophia spoke with a specialist, Ms. Chun explained the situation to Ray and the officers. The small conference room felt too bright, too sterile for the raw emotions unfolding within its walls. Ms. Chen's hands trembled as she clutched a paper cup of police station coffee, her voice breaking intermittently as she shared their story. She had recently escaped an abusive relationship in another state, moving here to start fresh. The restraining order paperwork lay on the table between them, official stamps and signatures validating her terror. She'd chosen this town carefully, a place where her ex had no connections, no way of finding them, or so she had thought. He was controlling, then violent, she explained, her eyes fixed on the table. When he started showing interest in Sophia, in disciplining her, her voice caught. That's when I knew we had to leave. No matter what, the man was her ex-boyfriend, who must have tracked them down despite the restraining order. According to Ms. Chun, he had begun appearing at their home 2 weeks ago, watching the house, eventually approaching Sophia when Ms. Chun was at work. He'd threatened to hurt her mother if she told anyone he was back in their lives. I work 2 jobs, Ms. Chun said, guilt weighing her words. Morning shift at the hospital cafeteria, evenings at the convenience store on Westbrook. I thought she was alone for just an hour after school, before our elderly neighbor could watch her until I got home from the first job. She pressed her fingers to her lips, stifling a sob. I had no idea he'd found us, that he was getting to her during that hour. Telling her if she told me, he'd hurt me. If she told anyone at school, he'd hurt both of us. I had no idea, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She's been so quiet lately, but I thought it was just the stress of moving, the new school. She looked at Ray with naked gratitude. If you hadn't noticed, if you hadn't cared enough to follow up, the thought hung unfinished in the air, the possibilities too terrible to voice. Ray reached across the table, hesitating before awkwardly patting Ms. Chen's hand. Sophia was brave, he said simply. She found a way to ask for help. Officer Rodriguez returned to the room with an update that deepened the chill in Ray's bones. According to Sophia, the man had been escalating his threats, insisting that soon she would be coming to live with him, that her mother wouldn't be a problem anymore. Today had been the day he'd planned to take her. If you hadn't deviated from the route, Rodriguez told Ray quietly, he likely would have attempted to take her from the bus stop. The words settled heavily on Ray's shoulders. It had been that close. A mundane decision, follow procedure or listen to instinct, had potentially averted a tragedy. Ms. Chun was provided with immediate resources, temporary housing at a location unknown to her ex, counseling services for herself and Sophia, and a direct line to a victim advocate who would help navigate the legal system. The restraining order would be reinforced, and patrols would be increased in the area while police searched for the ex-boyfriend. As Ray provided his official statement, detailing every observation and interaction over the past week, he couldn't help wondering how many other Sophias were out there. Children silently carrying burdens too heavy for their small shoulders, finding no way to ask for the help they desperately needed. In the days that followed, the police apprehended the ex-boyfriend attempting to flee the state. He was caught at a bus station 2 counties over, his hastily packed bag containing not only his belongings but items belonging to Sophia, evidence of his intent to take her with him. Ms. Chun and Sophia temporarily relocated to a safe house while the legal system addressed the restraining order violations and new threats. A week later, Ray found himself sitting across from Officer Rodriguez in the police station conference room, the same one where Ms. Chun had shared her story. The detective handling the case had just left after updating them. The ex-boyfriend was being held without bail, facing multiple charges. You know, we're not supposed to share case details, Rodriguez said, sliding a folder closed and tapping her fingers thoughtfully on its cover. But I thought you deserved to know. When we searched that man's car, we found evidence suggesting he planned to take Sophia across state lines that very day. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We found a set of fake identification papers for both himself and Sophia, along with sedatives a doctor would never prescribe for a child her age. Your intervention may have saved that child's life, Ray. Ray shook his head slowly, still processing everything that had happened. The weight of the near miss pressed on his chest, making it difficult to breathe. I just noticed something was wrong. Anyone would have done the same. But that's just it, Rodriguez replied, leaning forward with intensity in her dark eyes. Most people don't notice. They're too busy, too distracted, or they convince themselves it's not their business. They see a child acting strange and think, not my kid, not my problem, or worse. They notice but decide not to get involved. She tapped the table for emphasis. You noticed and you acted. That made all the difference. Ray rubbed his weathered hands together, uncomfortable with praise for what seemed to him a basic human obligation. How are they doing? Ms. Chun and Sophia. Better than could be expected, Rodriguez said, her expression softening. They're still at the safe house, but they're looking for a new place in district. Ms. Chun specifically requested they stay on your bus route. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. She says Sophia feels safe with you. The words warmed something in Ray's chest that had been cold for too long. Not pride exactly, but purpose. A sense that his routine life, the empty house, the familiar routes, the daily rhythms, had meaning beyond his own comfort. There's something else, Rodriguez continued. The chief wants to speak with you. The department's putting together a training program for people who work with children, teachers, bus drivers, coaches. Signs to look for, how to respond. He's hoping you might be willing to consult. Ray nodded slowly, considering. I'd like that, if it would help. It would, Rodriguez assured him. More than you know. 2 weeks passed before Ray saw Sophia again. They and her mother had moved to an apartment complex at the other end of his route. Still in district, but far from their previous home, far from the memories and fear that had haunted them there. It was the last stop on Ray's morning pickup, a newer development with tidy landscaping and security gates that provided more than the illusion of safety. When he pulled up to the new stop for the first time, Ms. Chun was waiting alongside Sophia. The mother raised her hand in greeting, a tentative smile replacing the fear and exhaustion that had marked her features at the police station. Sophia stood close beside her, no longer the frozen, frightened child of weeks before. As the girl climbed the bus steps, something had changed. Her shoulders were straighter, her eyes clearer, meeting Ray's gaze directly instead of darting away. She paused beside his seat and extended a small hand, offering a folded paper crane, its wings delicately creased from blue construction paper. My mom helped me make it, she said, her voice small but steady, the first words Ray had ever heard her speak. Thank you for being my hero. Ray's throat constricted with unexpected emotion as he accepted the delicate creation, turning it gently in his calloused fingers. Thank you for being brave, he managed to reply, his voice rougher than usual. Ms. Chun stood at the stop, mouthing thank you, as Ray closed the doors. In his mirror, he watched Sophia take a seat near the front, no longer hiding herself in the back of the bus. She caught his eye in the reflection and offered a tentative smile, small, but genuine. That afternoon, the district superintendent herself met Ray's bus at the depot. Barbara Levinson was a formidable woman who rarely visited the transportation department, preferring to delegate such matters to her administrators. Her presence by the chain-link fence as Ray completed his post-trip inspection immediately signaled the importance of whatever had brought her there. Mr. Morrison, she said as he descended the bus steps, clipboard in hand. Do you have a moment? Of course, Ray replied, setting aside his inspection sheet. Is everything all right? More than all right, she assured him. I've spoken with Police Chief Garvey. He's shared the general outlines of what happened with the Chun family. Nothing confidential, of course, but enough to understand the situation. Ray nodded, uncertain where this was leading. I'd like to speak with you about instituting a new training program, she continued. The police department has reached out about partnering with us on recognizing signs of child endangerment. Ray listened as she outlined a new initiative inspired by recent events. Though names were carefully omitted, he knew exactly which recent events she meant. The program would train all district employees who had regular contact with students, from cafeteria workers to coaches, teaching them to recognize warning signs and establishing clear protocols for reporting concerns. "We'd like you to help develop the training," she concluded. "Your experience and attention to detail could help other drivers know what to look for, when to report concerns. Chief Garvey speaks very highly of your observational skills." For the first time in 15 years, Ray's bus route felt like more than just a job. It was a lookout post, a mobile sanctuary, a daily opportunity to notice what others might miss. He agreed to the superintendent's proposal immediately. That evening, Ray placed the paper crane on his mantel, next to the last school photo of his own daughter before she'd moved away. His house felt less empty somehow, filled with the quiet satisfaction of having made a difference. In the kitchen, he paused over a calendar invitation from Doris a lunch with several colleagues from the transportation department next week. He'd often declined such gatherings in the past, preferring his solitude. This time he accepted. The following morning, Ray completed his pre-drive inspection with renewed purpose, checking each component with the same care as always but with sharper awareness. As the first children boarded, he greeted each one by name, noticing their expressions, their energy, whether anything seemed amiss. When the bus reached Sophia's new stop, she was waiting with another girl from her building, the two of them chatting quietly. She climbed the steps with more confidence than before, the ghost of a smile appearing as she met Ray's gaze. "Good morning, Mr. Ray," she said softly, clutching her backpack straps. "Good morning, Sophia," he replied warmly. "Ready for school today?" She nodded and made her way to a seat, no longer isolated but sitting beside her new friend. In his mirror, Ray watched as she pulled out a book, her face relaxed in a way he'd never seen before. As he pulled away from the curb, Ray caught sight of Miss Chun standing at the edge of the apartment property. She raised her hand in a grateful wave, which he returned with a nod of acknowledgement. In that silent exchange, Ray understood. He hadn't just stopped the darkness. He had helped preserve a future. The district soon implemented its new safety awareness program, with Ray as one of the key trainers. Bus drivers, crossing guards, cafeteria workers, all the adults who saw children daily outside parental supervision, learned to recognize signs of potential danger and how to respond appropriately. 2 months after the incident, Ray sat in a small conference room with Sophia, her mother, his supervisor, and Officer Rodriguez. The local news had gotten wind of the story, wanting to run a piece on the importance of community vigilance in protecting children. "You don't have to participate," Rodriguez assured them all, "but your story might help others recognize when to speak up." Sophia, who had been quiet throughout the discussion, suddenly straightened in her chair. "I want to," she said, her voice stronger than Ray had ever heard it. "If it helps other kids." Miss Chun looked at her daughter with pride shining in her eyes. "Are you sure, sweetheart? We can say no." Sophia nodded firmly. "I'm sure." She turned to Ray. "Mr. Ray wasn't scared to help me. I don't want to be scared anymore either." Ray felt his chest swell with emotion as he looked at this child who had found her courage in the aftermath of fear. She caught his eye and gave him a small smile, not the tentative one from weeks ago, but one bright with newfound confidence. The department instituted a new buddy system on the buses, pairing older students with younger ones to create another layer of support and observation. Sophia, despite her young age, had asked to be a buddy for kindergartners starting next year. Recovery wouldn't be instant, but the foundation for safety had finally been laid, allowing the slow work of healing to begin. The path ahead held challenges, but for the first time, the possibility of sunlight felt real and attainable. As Ray drove his route the next morning, he noticed Sophia had placed a small, colorful bracelet on her wrist, one of those friendship bracelets children make for each other. When she climbed aboard, she proudly showed it to him. "My new friend made it," she explained. "I'm making one for her too." And maybe, she hesitated, suddenly shy again, maybe one for you sometime? If that's okay? I'd like that very much, Ray replied, his voice rough with emotion. He watched her skip down the aisle to her seat, her backpack now decorated with bright keychains and buttons, small expressions of personality that had been absent before. As he closed the door and checked his mirrors, Ray felt a sense of purpose that transcended the simple act of driving children to school. In the reflection, he could see Sophia showing her bracelet to her seatmate, her face animated with the simple joy of childhood friendship, a joy that might have been stolen if not for a crumpled note and the decision to pay attention. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.